You are live. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sierra. Hello, Douglas County. My name is Kelly Robinson, Vice Chairman of the Purchasing Oversight Committee. This is the June 16th, 2022 meeting. It is the standing meeting of the Board of Commissioners of Douglas County. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a pretty tight agenda, and we're going to be orderly as necessary. Our chair, Commissioner McCarthy, will be here shortly. As is our custom, we must establish a quorum is present here. We're going to go around the room, and for the voting members of the committee, please recognize yourself. I'll start with myself, Kelly Robinson, Vice Chair, present.
Present Terry, Deputy County Administrator, present.
Tiffany Stewart Stanley, Assistant County Administrator, present.
Latanya Emmons, Director of Procurement, present.
Right. That means we've got 4 members out of our 5 voting members. We do have a quorum established. We'll seat Commissioner McCarthy, and I'll yield the floor when she arrives. That being said, Director, I now yield to you for the first business item, which should be what, meeting minutes adoption.
Yes. First business item, and I apologize, I don't have a printed agenda in front of me, but yes, the first item is the adoption of the meeting minutes from our previous meeting. Are there any questions regarding or corrections regarding the minutes?
And what are the dates of that meeting for the record?
That will be May 19th, 2022.
Right. Are there any additions, deletions, amendments to the May 19th, 2022 Procurement or Purchasing Oversight Committee meeting minutes? If there are no comments, we'll let them stand as so read and presented to the committee. All right, Director, next item. Let's keep moving.
Yes. As first item on the agenda, when we talk about, we want to address old business, and we will start with procurement cards. So I want to give everyone an update on the procurement cards at this time. Starting with number 1, we have just started the distribution of cards. We successfully completed training last week. And so with the particular training, we were able to train phase 1 participants, and that was a great success. And today this week we distributed P cards, and tomorrow we will have approver training. So also I would like to report that as we've discussed in the past, we had phase 1, which is more like a test group, and then we want to roll it out countywide. We didn't have dates associated with that. And so I'm glad to report that after some recent discussions with Bank of America, we're going to move up the phase 2 process, which is bringing on the Board of Commissioners and our county elected officials, and we will move them onto the procurement card within the next 2 weeks. And we will move off of the countywide credit card that we currently have with Synovus Bank, and I'm happy to report.
Good, thank you for that. I know that was an assignment that you inherited. We've had some historical challenges. As you work with our new vendor of record, Bank of America, and we got the old one, is there anything that you need from the Board of Commissioners by way of legislation? Do we have the capacity? Is there anything that we need to be involved in, or is it you got this? Please let us know.
Yeah, so currently today, I'm glad to report so far, I got this. And so that was after a great successful meeting this morning. I think the only thing legislatively that the commissioners may want to consider in the county ordinances is the approval of expenses by the board. However, those approvals that are typically on the agenda once a month at the BOC meetings will still not stop us from processing the credit card payment, uploading those receipts, and moving forward to conduct county business. So those are kind of 2 separate issues, even though they are kind of commingled. But right now we are good to go. I have a big smile on my face. We can move everyone on to the P card. My goal was to get rid of the Walmart cards, Lowe's cards, all the other store cards, bring it all in-house to be able to monitor compliance, monitor spend, categorize spend. I'm just excited. Not sure if you can hear that in my voice.
No, that's awesome. And thank you for that. And I won't belabor, but I do acknowledge one of the topics regarding expenses, something that the board knows at their level, specifically the board of commissioners. We have an expense account that was rendered to us by local legislation back in 1954. During that time, they did not fathom that district commissioners would grow to a point where they have their own operating budget. We pretty much facilitated any out-of-pocket expenses at that time for cash. Over time, a card was issued to help facilitate that for reimbursement. However, the Board of Commissioners here locally has its own operating budget, so I don't anticipate next month us being able to see this on our. The board won't be approving expenses anymore because we actually everything is coming against our budget, all of our travel, all of our meals, all of our anything else associated with running our district offices. So that will be less of an issue. That'll be one procedural step that I think will be eliminated, but we still need your guidance and oversight as how it needs to be lined up efficiently. So stay tuned.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. And yes, and you did mention travel. I'm working with Lisa on the travel policy. And yes, I do recognize and the difference between the BOC and the county employees, and that they have different guidelines, but yet we still provide oversight and help on how we're going to function as a county and adequately use not only the funds, but then the method of payment. So yes, I do know there is a difference between the two. And so for our constituents and those out in the county, yes, separate, but yes, the same. And so we want to move forward to bring more streamlined processes to the county, more transparency and synergy.
Awesome. Thank you. Are there any other comments regarding that from the committee members?
No, Commissioner Robinson.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Go ahead,
Thank you for
Madam
that,
Chair.
Deputy. Madam Carthen, to the committee, I now yield the floor. The chair is now here. Committee, welcome, Commissioner Carthen.
Thank you so much for taking us out of the office, just technical difficulties. So we got to address that in the technology committee, but nonetheless, thank you so much for stepping in for me. And County Administrator, Deputy County Administrator, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to just piggyback on what Director Emmons was mentioning about the P-card process. I'm equally as excited with her to share her excitement. Just a big kudos to Director Emmons as well as Justine Hayward and the work that they've done on this program. I'm excited about it. I know it's caused a lot of little frustration amongst the board and amongst the employees to get out there and have issues with the credit card. So we are transitioning off. One thing I do really want to point out about this whole process was the level of detail and the level of scrutiny that we put this P-card process through. It was not something that we just threw out there. We went step by step, and kind of early on in the process, Director Emmons came on board and jumped right in, and her experience in the managing a P-card program definitely came in handy with us starting ours. So kudos to you all involved. And I recently came off of my credit card. I'm on the P-card program now. It's working well for me, and I'm sure it'll be working well for the commissioners as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And to that note, just one last item on this. Will there be any training, or do you foresee the need for training?
Yes, there will be training. I will provide definitely training to the BOC as well as your legal aides as far as just how to use the system, show you some capacity. And then also we can set up reports if there are things that you want to see associated with your card. And so you will have access to go on and look at your charges at any time, day or night. And you're able to upload and reconcile, but we will provide the training for all aspects and any future training if you have a future need. And so we will schedule that real soon. But initially, just going to give you your credit card, and then we will, and then you'll be able to use it.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for the update. Next on the agenda item, I'm assuming that we did not get to our vendor GHB. Are they available for us to engage?
Madam
I
Carson,
believe they are.
Commissioner, hold on just a minute. Madam Carson, you're
All right, is
technology.
Allison
Really
on the line?
drag. Yeah, you're really dragging.
Hold on 1 second. I'm inside the courthouse.
We're gonna fix that too for you.
Let's see. So is GHB available?
Yes, they are.
Yes,
on the
we're here.
line.
Wonderful. So if Ms. Duncan, if you're available, if you could go ahead and introduce them, and we'll take it from there.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner Carthen. I'm pleased today to be here with the consultant team that we are recommending for the comprehensive plan update. VHB and their team was recommended by the evaluation committee who reviewed the proposals for the comprehensive plan update. As a reminder, at the June 6th work session, we presented this item to you, and you had asked for it to be removed from the agenda in order to bring the team here so that we could make introduction to them. So I'm glad to introduce Allison Stewart-Harris. She is here with members of the team, and I will turn it over to her to make introduction to her team and answer any questions that you may have. They also have a brief PowerPoint presentation if you would like to view the presentation, but otherwise I think they're just here to answer any questions that you may have about their approach to this project.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison. Appreciate it. It's an honor to be here this afternoon with you all. And I would just like to take a moment to introduce our team members. I'll go ahead and start with, however, I'm seeing people on my screen. So I'll go ahead and introduce Jen Price first. Jen, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jen Price. I'm a consultant at Sycamore Consulting. We're a small business indicator, and we work primarily in the community engagement and outreach space.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Carlos, how about you go next?
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. Carlos Perez with Perez Planning and Design. We're helping the VHB team on pedestrian, bicycle, active transportation planning and design components of the project.
Okay. Thank you, Carlos. And Nick.
Hey everyone, Nick Johnson with Georgia Conservancy. Apologies for joining from my phone. My computer's giving me a lot of issues. I am a senior planner with Georgia Conservancy. We're a conservation nonprofit, and we'll be assisting with the land use analysis and community engagement piece for this proposal.
Great. Thank you, Nick. And I'm Allison Stewart-Harris. I'm the community planning manager for VHB's Atlanta office. I have a number of years of experience here in the Atlanta region doing comprehensive plans and all sorts of long-range planning. We put together a great team of folks who have this experience throughout the region, have done this successfully together before, and we are really excited to be considered by you all for your team. So I guess I'll leave it up to you all if you would like us to briefly show you our slides, or Allison, if you want to just open up to questions. Happy to do this however you would like.
Not a problem. You can go ahead and show us your slides, and thank you for introducing your team and the diversity within your team.
Recording in progress.
So go right ahead.
Okay. All right. Can everybody see that screen, the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And are you seeing the PowerPoint or the proposal?
It looks like the PowerPoint.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So I know you all have seen the proposal, so I'm not going to go into extreme detail about that, but I did just want to highlight a couple of elements. This is our org chart for the project. I would be running the project as your project manager and serving as the senior planner. Joining me from VHB would be Fabricio Ponce as the principal in charge. He was also the principal in charge for the county's recently completed comprehensive transportation plan. Also helping me from VHB would be Anna Baggett as our deputy project manager and planner. Anna was a former planner with ARC and has a lot of comprehensive plan experience as well. Jen introduced herself earlier. She would be joined by her colleague Christine to do engagement. Nick with Georgia Conservancy, who we just heard from, will be leading the land use analysis and housing. He's done some great housing studies recently in the area, I believe, for Douglasville. And Carlos would be our Parks, Green Space, and Trails lead. This is a little bit of a special element to this comprehensive plan. It was something that was specifically called out in your RFP to make sure that we were really putting a lot of thought towards your parks and green spaces. So we felt it was important to bring Carlos on, who has awesome expertise in this area throughout the region. It's interesting with comprehensive plans. They're very broad plans, but there are not a lot of firms in the Atlanta region who actually do this type of work. So we really tried very hard to assemble a team of folks who had really deep experience here. This is a listing of the comprehensive plans that our team members have done in the past 5 years or so, as well as our recent project experience in Douglas County. And again, this is all in the RFP as well if you want further detail on each of these planning experiences. And then finally, this is our proposed schedule. Your staff has done a great job of getting ahead of your comprehensive plan deadline to make sure there's plenty of time to execute the plan and allow for potential delays due to COVID or anything else. But we are looking at this as a little bit over a year-long process. So we've broken it down into 6 different tasks, ideally starting in the coming weeks or months. And we would have a pretty robust plan of engagement as well that goes along throughout each of these tasks and really make sure that we are talking to folks all across the county and getting their input. We would be shooting to have that submittal ready to the state probably around late summer next year, depending on the start, and that's well ahead of your deadline. So I know that's a very brief overview. I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have about our team or our process.
Thank you so much, Allison. One of the questions that I do have, or at least it's a good gesture because I'm the one who loves trails and the park system and the beautiful green space that we have in Douglas County. So can you shed a little bit more light about how will you engage the community and that aspect of it? And then my second part of my question, and then I'll turn the floor over to my colleagues, is how will you plan to engage our community in regards to the uses of buildings and retail space and housing issues that Douglas County and probably every county is seeing now? How we will be able to address that?
Sure. So I will start, and then I'll turn it over to both Carlos and Jen, who would have specific roles there. A comprehensive plan is really a 20-year look, and it's a very high-level look at the county and how you all would like to grow. So in most cases, we won't be getting into specifics of, what type of business is going to go in this exact retail spot. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at your character area map. Y'all did this 5 years ago with ARC, so there's a starting point. And what we'll plan to do is we'll go out into the community. We'll probably do it by geography and, meet with folks, say, okay, here's what your map says now. Let's talk about some of the changes that have occurred in the past few years. What are some of the challenges that you're having? What are some of the things you would like to maybe see happen differently in your area? And we'll take that input, and there's a variety of ways we can do that, and Jen can share a little bit more about the specific mechanisms, and we'll take that and we'll integrate that into both a character area map. We'll integrate it into any kind of updated policies that y'all have, and then we also have something called the community work program, which is sort of your punch list of action items to do. So depending on what we hear from the community, that really informs quite a bit of that. So, one of the areas where Carlos will be really helpful is in taking a closer look at, within all your different character areas, what do green spaces look like? Where are the areas where maybe a more natural, conservation-based green space is what's most desired versus, we really need a sports complex in this area. And Carlos has done a lot of countywide, citywide plans around parks and recreation planning and can really help there. So what I'll do is I'm going to pass it off to Carlos to talk a little bit more about the greenways and trails piece, and then I'll ask Jen to pop in as well to talk a little bit about the engagement. Carlos?
Yes, again, good afternoon, and happy to be here. As Allison mentioned, parks and open spaces and planning and active transportation is something that we specialize in now for 18 years. We've been fortunate that we've worked with over 125 communities in the Southeast on these types of projects, most recently City of Atlanta, Gwinnett County, working with DeKalb County now. So it's really working very closely with Jen Price and her public engagement strategy to understand what is it that your constituents would like to see in the county, and then developing a framework, right, based on staff involvement as well as best practices on how best to be responsive to those needs and priorities, and then also how to connect residents to those spaces throughout the county. So a very collaborative, involved process that we would look forward to working very closely with all of you on.
And just to kind of piggyback off Carlos, as he mentioned, sort of our approach overall really is listening. The first meeting when we kick off the project is our chance to not just introduce ourselves to the community, but to really hear from the community their needs, their desires, their wants for the county in the future. And so that first meeting really is designed to be a visioning opportunity where we will listen, we'll talk about the intention of the project, but really give folks a chance to tell us about the vision and to figure out how that ties back into our goals. We'll marry that with some online engagement as well. We found, with COVID, this whole process has really taught us a lot about engaging with people. The methods that used to work have become sort of hybrids now going forward. So in addition to having those in-person opportunities, those meetings, we think having a really robust online presence through a social pinpoint or through a website is a really good way to kind of support and complement what we'll be bringing out to the community at that first meeting. So we can design a website and design specific tools that can marry with that first visioning opportunity and make sure that we're getting information from people from all segments of the population. And that's our approach going forward, really, is to use sort of this hybrid approach where we'll not only be in public with people, but to create opportunities online for folks to engage as well.
Thank you so much for that, Jen and Carlos. I appreciate it. I'll now turn the floor over to any of my colleagues, Commissioner Robinson or
Yes.
County Deputy Administrator. Commissioner Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you. All right, I'll be brief, and thank you for that presentation. Your methodology, I understand it quite well. To your point, comprehensive plan is 20 years. Basically a high-level business plan. You have then a comprehensive transportation plan that overlays on top of that. Also looking out 20 so years, right? Very, very broad. Then you have your annual strategic plan, or I want to call 3 to 5 year strategic plan. Now, all these require public engagement, right? So it's consistently asking the community. And then we have our annual execution plan, which is our administrators deal with. And as I'm listening to you and I'm aligning all of these things at the same time, and at the same time, we're negotiating the SCS with our cities, as well as our laws. And these, for the public, these are important exercises. This is statutory. We're required. In other words, the states require all of us to go through this process. In which you got to know what you're doing when you're running a government. There's a formal process to this, and it is high level. And I appreciate you hit on the point of character areas, which is very, my district being District 2, the Eastern Wall, is very different than Western Wall, which is District 4. So to the team, how will you ensure that, how will you acknowledge, how does your methodology acknowledge the very distinctive character areas? Because how I may envision in my citizens, how I try to advocate on their behalf may be totally different. How do you let them coexist? What is your approach? Can you talk to us about that? And that's the only question I have now. All right, I want to hear this.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Yeah, so, let me start by saying, the character area piece of the comprehensive plan to me is the real heart of everything, right? Particularly in a county like Douglas, where you do have such a vast geography. Your district, like you mentioned, is different than the far western district. So what we see doing is, in our engagement strategy, let's see, I'm looking at it right now to make sure I'm speaking accurately. So we have up to 25 stakeholder interviews in our scope of work. We have a steering committee meeting, and ideally we would have folks on that steering committee meeting that really represent the breadth of Douglas County. We will have up to 4 different engagement opportunities, and we would work with the steering committee to really identify, what are those methods going to be, right? Do we want to go pop up at a festival? Are there, is the traditional community meeting something that still works well in Douglas? We'll talk about that, and then that online piece. And what we'll do, throughout the process is really make sure that we are talking about that character area map front and center. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, and you already have one, right? So we have a starting point. And which I think is very helpful, because whenever you give someone something to respond to and say, yeah, you know what, this sounds right, or yeah, this doesn't sound right. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. One way that we've done typically is, we'll have our meeting, we'll go over what the intent of the comprehensive plan is, and we'll get into breakout groups. So we'll have small facilitated discussions where we sit down with folks, maybe 5-6 people to a table and say, okay, right now when we're looking at the character area in this district, this is what we have. Does this feel right to you? Now, what are some of the things that you're seeing in terms of new development? Do you have concerns about that? When you think 10, 20 years out, what are you envisioning? So, we're taking down notes, we're doing these different facilitated exercises, and we're getting this input from all these different sources. Carlos and I had a great boss a long time ago who would always talk about, well, let's see what bubbles up. You stack all the input on and you see what are the trends, what are you hearing over and over again? And that's what we're really going to be looking for. What are we hearing from multiple sources across the county, across districts, and say, okay, we're hearing this very clearly that in this area, for example, let's say there's a lot of concern over freight traffic and what it's doing to our roadways, what it's doing to our neighborhoods. Let's make sure that we're addressing that through the character areas. Let's talk about what kind of transportation policies are needed. Let's make sure that we are reflecting that in our character area map to say, you know what, this is not an area where we want to see a lot of future industrial development, and making sure that those policies line up. And part of it, I can't say exactly where it will go, because so much of it really is based off of that input and what we hear consistently over and over again. And again, there's a lot of ways to do it, but one of the ways that we found in our previous studies is to really get in those small conversations with folks. And there's ways to do that online as well. Jen, I don't know if you want to chime in about some of the other mechanisms that you've used recently.
I was thinking about that, but what I wanted to do was really zoom out and just sure that we acknowledge that while there are lots of planning processes going on at one time, people have limited time, and we definitely understand that and know that. And one of the things that we've done in previous planning processes or in counties or cities where there are a lot of things happening is just to be sure that our process dovetails with all the other things that are happening. There's no, in my opinion, reason to have 3 different meetings about things that may kind of coincide, where some of the circles may overlap, when we can economize and make the best of people's time. And so that's our approach really going into this, and with all processes that are happening within the county, is to make sure that what we're doing dovetails well with what's already happening, that we can economize on people's time and really get the most out of those interactions that we have with people.
Both of those were sufficient responses. Thank you very much, both. Madam Carthen, just one more additional question is that for the public's sake, we brought this into committee not only just to be introduced to the team at a more granular level, but also there was additional engagements or addendums to the work. Can we talk about, and Allison, maybe you can tackle this as well, separating this engagement from the additional work such as the Lithia Springs or the Veterans West? Can you talk about that just for the record, so that we're consistent, since that was brought up during our last Board of Commissioner meeting, please?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Robinson. So as I think our consultant team has indicated, we have been working on our comprehensive plan update for a minute. We know that this is a required update, by the state. And so we have probably been working with Director Ammons for a number of months to put this out to bid, get this prepared, put this out to bid, and go through that process. We had budgeted for this, project, and so all of the work that we're trying to do with our comprehensive plan update is accounted for in our budget. So once we have gotten through that process, there was a request that came to us a bit later afterwards, and I might actually call on Director Worthington to help me out with this, because Director Worthington was actually at that meeting to undertake a small area plan, particularly for the west side of Highway 78. So in discussion about that, my principal concern is if we did 2 land use studies kind of at the same time on top of each other with sort of different goals and different firms, that could confuse the public. So what we had proposed was using the same team, assuming it's the will of the commissioners to award the contract for the comprehensive plan updates to this team. We would use the same team through a contract amendment to do a more granular level of land use study and economic development study in the identified area that the Development Authority, I believe, was the one who had requested the more detailed level of study. Now, to be perfectly clear, that is not budgeted, and so that would be one question that we would have to answer. And again, all of that has come in very far after the fact of the work that we had done on the comprehensive plan. But we propose that as one possible solution to deliver that requested item on the timeline that has been requested by the Development Authority. And I'm going to pause there and see if Director Worthington would like to add anything or maybe correct anything that I didn't get quite right about that, because I believe you were the one that was actually in those meetings, and I'm just trying to repeat what I had understood.
First off, nothing to correct. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. So basically, at the request of the Development Authority, the chairman and Commissioner Guider, 4th District, they were looking to do a small area study in that area, kind of defined between the western limits of Douglasville city limits and the eastern limits of the city of Villa Rica, more or less north of I-20, about 7,000 or 8,000 acres up through there. So primarily what we didn't want to do, staff level didn't want to happen, is 2 separate studies going on at once and not being able to use one another's information or end up with 2 different outcomes. So really we'd like, to have one countywide comprehensive study that shows everything kind of high level, and then in the small area study, it's drilled down with much more detail. So that's kind of the thought process behind it. As Allison said, the small area study is a much newer thought, younger idea, not funded, where the comprehensive plan is funded and been talked about for a year or more now. So I don't know if that's sufficient.
No, that's sufficient. No, that's sufficient. I need a clarity. I heard you say veterans. It was my understanding that was veterans as well as Lithia Springs. Is that not accurate for a small area study?
The Lithia Springs portion was not included in that. It was basically from I-20 up to Cedar Mountain Road, which would encompass the entire western portion of Bankhead Highway. And it would go from the western limits of City of Douglasville, and it would head west over to the eastern limits of the City of Villa Rica.
No problem. No, you're fine.
To say, but basically you're looking at around an 8,000 acre rectangle of land there that's, several miles long and has a lot of potential.
Nope, let it go. I see where it derived from the 2 commissioners and economic development. This is even new for us. I'm glad we're having this conversation. Madam Carthen, I'm good. I'm going to yield at that. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, James.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Director Worthington and Director Duncan. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Since this is a Procurement Oversight Committee and it was brought up by 2 other commissioners, I would ask for the for Deputy County Administrator to take this up, to, as opposed to us making a recommendation for it, for them to take it up as to the full Board of Commissioners and identify if there is funding, and then the full board can weigh in on that, as opposed to it just being a recommendation from us, since we're just not hearing about it. Is that okay, Director Perry?
That works.
Wonderful.
That works.
And I'm assuming Allison, well, both Allisons, this is something you all have talked about. And of course, you will be getting the information that Allison Duncan needs if this is to move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
So just to clarify, I believe that at this point, when this first came to the work session on June 6th, it was asked to be removed from the work session. So I think that they would need some direction from Purchasing Oversight Committee if y'all are comfortable putting the comprehensive plan update and the West Bankhead study back on the meeting agenda for the June 21st work session and the June 22nd meeting. I may be misunderstanding, and somebody can clarify that, but I think that we would need some direction if this is to go back on the agenda. It wasn't actually tabled.
It is to go back on the agenda, Allison, but Director Perry needs to identify where those funds, if this is to be expanded, is to come from.
Oh, sure. No, understood.
So
understood.
that portion of it. Okay.
Understood. And to that point, you do have the
Wonderful.
You have the scope for the West Bankhead. So you do have the scope and the fee. That fee came in at $67,000. And so, and you do have the scope for that project. You also have the RFP for the comprehensive plan. All of that was attached as a part of your packet. I will confirm with Lisa, but I believe you should have all of those items still as attachments in your packet. If that goes back on the work session for the
On the work session agenda. Okay.
And if I may, this may be helpful for you, CA Perry, but the way I had this on the original agenda was a single agenda item for the comprehensive plan, because that was already funded and the idea sort of approved already. And then I had a separate agenda item for the amendment, since it is an unfunded item. And that one will require a budget amendment to go along with it. So just putting that out there.
Point of order, Commissioner, Madam Chair.
Yes, you have the floor.
Yeah, just clarity, my understanding of what your motion was, because I seconded that, was just to table this to the next meeting. We were going to have our purchasing oversight committee just to get assurance, but to staff, put it back on the agenda. I mean, so you're asking for it, it's already on the agenda by default.
Got it.
And there's no action needs to be taken by her. She's just clarifying. We're not going to add as a recommendation. It's already on the agenda. Now, if she chose to, she could. She's just choosing not to. So you've been giving your direction, and you've been giving guidance, guys. We're good. We need to keep this meeting going.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, VHB, for coming in. I appreciate you guys. We won't hold you. You can drop off the line, and I hope to see you soon.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, guys.
Thank you.
Next agenda item, Ms. Amons.
Apologize, couldn't unmute quick enough. So the next item on the agenda is I want to discuss the old business, solicitation number 22-010, on-demand project management. Previously, I had shared with the board that we would have a recommendation today. And unfortunately, we do not have a recommendation ready today for the committee. We just have not had an opportunity to finish evaluating all of the bid submissions for the on-demand project management tool. And I'm asking for approval to add it to the work session on Tuesday. We are meeting tomorrow, and we plan to have a recommendation to submit and add to the work session on Tuesday. And so that is just an update. Again, I apologize. We just haven't had an opportunity to finish those bid review, evaluation, and yet ready to submit today.
So I might understand, Ms. Amons, that you all have not calculated all of the bid tabulations yet in order to bring it forth to us so that we can give a recommendation. So your request is to just move it to the full board once those tabulations have been calculated?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Commissioner Robinson, you have the floor.
Yeah. In light of the fact that there's related initiatives are going on that this potentially could impact or help, it's your call to go straight to the board through administrative concurrence. But I would highly recommend, if you chose that course, that the team informs you as the chair, as our legislation said, that you alone, if you're briefed and you're comfortable, then it can keep moving. So it can go straight to the board, administrative concurrence, but only with the condition I would only support that if they told you what the outcome was before it gets to the full board. It's your call.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson. I will take that as a recommendation from you, Commissioner Robinson, that Ms. Amons, as soon as you all tabulate and you all have the findings, if you will just call me or brief me on that.
Okay.
But if we have concurrence from the POC committee that this can be taken to the full board after I've been briefed, then I'm fine with that. So do I have concurrence from you, Commissioner Robinson?
Vice Chair concurs.
Okay. CA Perry?
I concur.
County Administrator Stuart Stanley?
Yes, I concur. Thank you.
Okay, you're here. Oh, wonderful. Hi. And Ms. Amons?
Yes, I concur.
All right, so it's concurrence, and we'll just handle it with me offline, and then to the full board to go on the agenda for was it Tuesday's meeting?
Yes, Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you so much. Is there any other items to come before the board? The committee?
The last item for today will be, we have Ron Roberts on the line. He's from Douglas County Connect Douglas. And we put out a solicitation for security system down at the transportation center. And the committee would like to present NCI and recommend NCI to be the vendor of choice for the actual awardee for this particular contract. And I believe that the vendor may be online to give a brief overview. I'm sorry, is NCI here?
Yeah, they are. I think he's calling from his, he's on his cell phone. And then I'm also here for any questions as well.
Madam Chair, before we get into the vendor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner Robbins, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick, Director Roberts or Director Amons. So the process that you went by to select this vendor, was it a formal process or is it somebody? How did we arrive here? I just want to know what I'm looking at. Are y'all giving us the finals of a tabulation or what are we looking at?
I apologize, Commissioner. Yes, so we posted a public solicitation for the Cobb County, CCTV Douglas County surveillance for the transportation center. So we had two vendors that submitted a bid. That was Johnson Controls and NCI. And we evaluated the bids, and the committee is recommending NCI as the vendor to be awarded. The funds to pay for this are via a grant, and we this grant expires in September, I believe, Ron. And so part of the bid requirements was we need the equipment in August, so we'll be able to produce a purchase order, have the security completed, and then we'll be able to have the grant run out. As you know, that the grant was awarded a couple of years ago. Then with COVID, there was just a slowdown. Ron took over. Oh, wow, we don't want to lose these funds. It is needed. Our current system is not operable effectively. And so we have the funds available, but we're just up against that deadline to draw down those grant funds. And so
Sufficient answer. You're fine. Sufficient answer. You're good. Thank you for that. We spent some time. Madam Chair, I yield back to floor.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson. Thank you for that update, Ms. Amons. Director Roberts, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good. Director Ammons is 100% correct. This grant, in particular, GA 90X324, was submitted in 2014, and it's been sitting out there for a long time. We've made a commitment to FTA to get these funds moving on that, and about 4 other grants that came through in 2014 and a couple in 2017 to get moving. We went through the entire process. We like the applicant. We have the applicant has joined us now. I see Jeff Wagner has joined from NCI to answer any other questions. We were very specific in our pursuit, and you're 100% right. The cameras that are down here were the cameras I placed here 10 years ago. So we need these cameras as soon as possible. We've already moved on some grant funding to do the fencing that Madam Chair had specifically requested on the upper lot. That's been completed and installed. So we're on track to meet our goals stated to the FTA Region 7 officers. So excited to be here and get this going. And like I said, Jeff Wagner's on, and I can answer any other questions. We're here for you. Jeff, you want to add anything?
Well, I'm definitely here and willing to answer any questions. Definitely the system that's in place is outdated and most of the cameras are not working. The system that we're going to put in will carry you well into the future. with its scope and and the products being used.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. And so, from my understanding, this can all be done in the next 30 to 45 days. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Wagner?
By the end of August.
By the end of August.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you would need to order the equipment and get it installed, and that's within the scope of Mr. Wagner and the bid proposal.
Correct.
Okay. All righty. Commissioner Robinson, you have the floor.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, security is important for us, whether it's our judicial courthouse, whether it's our jail, the public access that we're responsible for. So here's my question for you. You're putting in this system. Who's going to monitor it? How does maintenance work? Who gets to see it if there's emergency? Does the sheriff get to tap into it? Is it being recorded? What are we buying? I mean, you don't have to go alone. Again, this is just the committee. And obviously, these questions may be asked again on the full floor. But can you get a little bit more clarity on what when you say cameras, you're assuming that me as a decision maker and the public that's looking at knows what you're talking about when we don't do this day-to-day. Can you take a little bit of time and give us a little bit more insight, please?
Yeah, if that's okay, Jeff, just stay on because I'm gonna take a shot at this. But basically, we have to run a new fiber because the fiber that was in place will not handle the camera capacity. We're actually going to be using less cameras than was initially done 10 years ago because of the advancement with camera technology. We can use less cameras, but they cover more 360. And the server is located here. It's autonomous. It's not going to be tied. We already have a security system which we repaired that goes straight to. It's a panic button that goes straight to the sheriff's department. But the other systems itself do not tie in to the courthouse under this phase. We would autonomously have those and be able to work with the sheriff's department as we have in the past when they've made requests about certain things. Part of what the camera system includes is tag recognition. And we've spoken with the sheriff's department, at least several of the committee members that reviewed this did along the process so that we made sure that, we could coordinate with them because they'll have tag numbers that they're specifically looking for, which we can load into the system, which would then, if they egress or ingress out of the parking area here at Rideshare, then those cameras those tags automatically are flagged and an alert would come in.
Let me stay right there. So this has to do more with public safety as opposed to securing of our assets. What about people inside, employees, corridors, inside the facility? Is there anything there? My second question related to that is there remote access? In other words, can I be somewhere and as you're a director and somewhere can you log in remotely? Right now I'm listening to just cameras and tag readers. Like, okay, now what are we doing with this again? Like you're talking about securing it.
No, that's exactly correct. I mean, it's just like I have a camera system at my own house. I get a notice when someone drives up or something happens. This system's a little bit more advanced than that in the sense that it actually would begin recording and have those flags and those situations available for us offsite to check on, and we can dial in and check on those.
All right, I'm going to stop there. Madam Chair, thank you, Director. You've answered my question. And since it's the time, I yield back my time. Mr. Carthen, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for the update, Director Roberts. Again, so we have the capacity. This will again be updated on the server that you and only you have access to. But it will be shared if necessary with the sheriff's department in order to get information that may be vital to the public if there's anything that goes on at the Rideshare facility.
Yes, Commissioner Carthen, that is correct. And also, before I even started this process, this was back in February when I recognized that we needed to do this. I had a really good conversation with James Worthington and also Alex Battencourt, who was on our selection panel for the cameras themselves. So the backup, the required backup data is all included in the proposal that we got from NCI, and that was one of the things we looked at. So we have a requirement from the county that we have that length of days and that extra terabytes for that storage, and that's included, and we made sure that was accounted for, ma'am.
Perfect. Okay, so, and is there a match for this that we can, that we need to be aware of?
Yes, ma'am. And I've had some conversations about that because I have money in my budget. My situation is I walked into a budget that's got a lot of moving pieces there, but I talked to Rosalind and I talked to Tiffany about this a couple of months back. And we have the 20% match to go ahead and do this. And I don't, in running the numbers, I think it's totally within our budget, but I did want to make them aware that I wasn't sure because it wasn't like there weren't specific things that were itemized out. However, when you apply for these FTA grants, and even when you apply in 2014, like for this particular one, that's part of the assurances that go with the grant is that you as the county have that match. So I think we're in good shape. I'm not worried about it, and I am very excited to get this issue going forward because I think it's going to help a lot with some of the issues that we're having in the parking lot with some vandalism and things of that nature, and be able to have that.
Thank you, Director Roberts. Ms. Ames, I will accept a recommendation if you would like to make a motion for one.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we accept the proposal of NCI and we select them as our vendor of choice for the security system for Connect Douglas.
Second that motion, Madam Chair.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, when I call your name, please vote accordingly. Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
C.A. Perry?
Yes.
Tiffany Stewart Stanley?
Yes.
Latanya Amons?
Yes.
Myself, Commissioner Carthen, yes. We have a 5-0 unanimous vote to move this recommendation forward to the Board of Commissioners for approval. And please get that contract to Attorney Coleman as soon as you can, Director Roberts, and we'll let the C.A. Perry and Deputy Stewart Stanley take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Carthen, Madam Chair?
Yes, you have the
Real
floor.
quick. Yeah, just real quick. So we've had 2 items that we're going to add to the agenda because I have to sign off on them after this meeting. Do you want to add this as a third one for next week or later? Where you want just to make a recommendation straight now or next week?
I would allow for the deputy county administrator and the assistant county administrator to decide that, since they do know that it has to go before the attorneys for them to look at the contracts and everything. So hopefully they would do that before it's brought to us. So that may take it being brought to the Board of Commissioners after this meeting, but I would allow them to do that because they know they have to do their due diligence before it's brought before us.
Yeah. So to that point, timing, there was an assumption being baked in, or at least it was implied, that you're going to be done by August by some deadline. And so our meetings are our meetings. Luckily we have a meeting on the 30th. And so even if you don't make this one, you have timing. But if we miss it by a month, if you miss it by a normal cycle of a month, would that have been an impact? Because it sounds like we're going to be okay. And we'll let it go. I'm going to follow what you said, and then we'll leave it alone. Keep it moving. All right.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there anything else to come before the Purchasing Oversight Committee?
No, nothing else for today, Commissioner Carthen.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We will now conclude the meeting. The meeting is adjourned. It is now 1:56. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.